My name is Lindsay Atkeson. I'm an associate at IndieBio New York, and we're super excited to have everyone here today to experience our new space at 7 Penn Plaza, and really just to take the opportunity to discuss here on this panel the future of food and how we can leverage technology really to improve the way we produce, distribute, and consume. I'm joined here by 3 amazing panelists, including 2 SOSV founders. We're super excited to have Isabella Iglesias-Musachio, CEO of Bosque Foods and Class 3 graduate, as well as Neil Schauer, CSO of Harmony Baby Nutrition and Class 2 graduate. I'd also like to introduce Rini Greenfield, founding general partner of Rethink Food and investor in Harmony Baby Nutrition seed round. So without further ado, I'd love to have you guys introduce yourselves, a little bit about your background and your firm or your startup.
I'll go ahead. Hi, everyone. I'm Rini Greenfield. I'm the founding managing partner of Rethink Food, and our fund invests at the intersection of technology and food. We're looking to support companies that are driving a sustainable and more nutritious outcome for the food system, which I think we've heard enough about, that it is deeply in need of change. 31% of greenhouse gas emissions come from the food system. 14% come from animal agriculture. I think my fellow panelists will be able to talk more about that. So at Rethink Food, we're looking at companies that are driving systemic change across the entire system, from agriculture all the way over to ingredients. And we are kind of hitting the ground running with Harmony Baby Food, Baby Nutrition, pardon. We're going to change our name, so it's going to change.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Isabella. I'm the CEO of Bosque Foods. At Bosque, we're creating a fermentation platform that can, as you've heard today, be used for a number of different applications, whether it's in the food industry or biomaterials. But for us, we're focused on creating center-of-the-plate meat alternatives and fish alternatives, starting with chicken and pork. So we're very focused on food, but I think as you'll learn throughout our talk today and from some of the companies that have come before, there's so many applications that you can use for mycelium for. So again, we're starting with chicken and pork, center-of-the-plate replacements, and yeah, I'll tell you a little bit more about our company today, but we're a former cohort company from the 3rd cohort, and since then we've done a lot. We graduated, we raised our seed round, we built up our lab for our R&D back in Germany, in Berlin, grew our team quite significantly to not only work on the biotech, meaning our fermentation process, but also on the product development. So you can see the fruits of that labor today. After all the panels, we're going to be tasting more product in the kitchen, so please come by, get some samples. And yeah, a little bit that we've also done since graduating was working on a regulatory and IP and doing some initial customer discovery. So we're tasting our products and sampling it with chefs and restaurants in Berlin, actually, New York, and San Francisco, but also with food manufacturers, retailers, and so on. So I don't want to hog the space here. I'm happy to give more details, but we've been very busy, and IndieBio was a really amazing launch for us to really just like hit the ground running. So yeah, thanks. Nice to meet you all.
Hello, everyone. I'm Neil. I'm the CSO at Harmony, and the short description of Harmony is that we're a company developing a hypoallergenic infant formula. You can ask why that's necessary, but then almost everybody can remember last summer when there was a huge shortage of infant formula. And the infant formulas that were hit the hardest were the ones that are hypoallergenic. And you can ask the question, what is that? The answer is that 20% of babies who are on infant formula today become allergic to the proteins that are in the infant formula. And so 150 years ago, before infant formula was a thing, people knew that. And so way back then, if mom couldn't make enough breast milk, the only alternative was to find a wet nurse. The reason those were the only options was because people back then knew that cow's milk was not a good thing to feed humans. And so for the past 150 years, we've somehow forgotten that. But the fact that so many babies now have a problem with cow's milk-based formulas really provides a tremendous opportunity. What Harmony is really trying to do is to not really compete with other infant formula companies, because what we really want to do is to produce a synthetic human breast milk. So we don't want to have anything to do with cow's milk, those allergic components, but to start from scratch and build something that is really much more human. So I'll stop there.
Awesome. Thank you for your introductions. My first question really goes to Rini. Traditionally, you've been a tech investor, but we have you here on the food panel. You were a major part of Harmony's seed round. Would love to hear more about kind of your investment thesis in food tech.
I love this question. So I spent my entire career investing in technology, starting, from the early days in semiconductors. Somehow I got this job as a semiconductor investor coming out of Berkeley as an economics major. So I walked out of my first interview and called my dad, who was an engineer by training, and I said, "Dad, what is a semiconductor?" And he was thrilled. He was like waiting his entire parenting life for that question. But needless to say, I spent a long time investing in everything from software to data to hardware to semis. This is the foundation of this new food system. I don't think I'm investing in anything all that different, because this is biotechnology. It's just now being applied to something that is truly much more useful. I won't tell you how long I've been investing, but there was a point in my career where I realized that there was a gaping hole in the food system, meaning investors were investing in impact, but they were extremely focused on alternative energy and storage and EV and things that Elon Musk could do, and it was very sexy. But 31% of greenhouse gases came from the food system, and nobody was really focused on it, and there was a whole host of reasons. And all of that was changing. And it was because the consumer was starting to drive a change. They are spending more of their wallet share on sustainability and nutrition. Governments are starting to have to change because it is an existential crisis. You started to see really exciting big companies get really attractive valuations for the first time in the system. So capital started to flow to the sector. And then you started to see the best and the brightest actually start working in food science, which unfortunately in the past hadn't happened. So with all these incredible tailwinds, I thought I need to take this, 2 years, closer to 20 years of technology investing experience and apply it to where we can see the most change. So that's how I came to food.
That's awesome. And my next question goes to Neil. There's been a lot of startup activity, I would say, in the baby care industry, like over the past few years. In fact, we had 2 startups in Class 2 focused specifically on infant health. I'd love to hear, actually, from your perspective as CSO of Harmony, kind of what changes you've seen in the industry and what technologies you anticipate will kind of be the most transformative.
Well, before I actually answer on the technology aspect, I'd like to actually pick up a little bit on what Rini was saying. And the consumers of infant formula, the mothers have changed a lot, and in a number of ways. One, they're much more informed than they've ever been before. My daughter recently had a baby, and she read everything she possibly could about formula before the baby was born, and then after. But my daughter is a good example because she is older in age. So older women basically have a harder time making enough milk. So the demographics have changed. The other demographic change is that many babies are delivered by cesarean section, and for those babies, the mom just has a really tough time, making enough breast milk. So for those reasons, those babies still deserve the very best nutrition possible. And so again, what Harmony wants to do is to make a synthetic human breast milk. So that's one of the things that's different. The other thing is, so I started in the biopharm industry almost 40 years ago. And way back then, we were really trying to figure out how to make money with genes. And it didn't take very long to realize that pharmaceuticals was the best way to do it, especially back then because the technology wasn't there yet. So you could make a few micrograms per liter of a protein, and for a very potent pharmaceutical, that was enough. We thought about foods back in those days, but the technology just wasn't there. And what's changed is now expression technologies are much more productive. And you heard a couple right before us where new ways of doing it, creative ways of doing it, where you can produce these proteins in large amounts for very, very little cost of goods. So that's, I'll turn it over.
No, definitely. And I'd like to turn it over to Isabella. You mentioned basically developments, post IndieBio on the regulatory front, IP, customer discovery. It's like so nice to see you here again at IndieBio. I'd love to hear more about the progress you've made since graduating, I think almost a year ago now.
So yeah, I think I kind of breezed over it before, but once we graduated, we raised our seed round quite quickly, which was great. I think a sign of the times at that moment. And we then were able to bring our team back to Germany and start our R&D lab there. A lot of the team is European, which is why we ended up going back. And so since then, we've been oh my gosh, like so much. We've built up our entire lab. We've tripled our team, which meant that we also added a team for product development. So really trying to focus on developing end products as early as possible, getting them into the hands of consumers and our first types of end clients as quickly as possible. And I think that this is a change, at least between Bosque and what you've seen maybe some of our competitors in the space do, where oftentimes you see products taking 5 to 10 years to actually get to market. And I understand why, because it's extremely difficult, and there's a lot of R&D that goes into it. But I also think the times have changed, and companies need to be much more focused and much quicker to market. So we're really pushing ourselves to develop products and already start testing them and already start selling them actually this year. And that kind of then brings me to the topic of regulatory. So the regulatory environment, I think we're going to talk about in maybe another question, is very complex for our types of products. It's maybe not as complex as those for the cultured meat space, but nevertheless, in Europe, for example, in every region, you do need to go through regulatory approvals. So we've already kickstarted that process in 3 different regions. And so that's been a big push and something that I think also Bosque is going very quickly at, which I think as a point of comparison just like shows we're very much like in a race, I think. And for us, the race is not like with competitors, but it's really a race to be able to make an impact, bring products to the market, and start actually making a difference for all of the many things that we see going wrong in our food system. And then lastly, I'll just say, we're also trying to push ourselves to test increasing our production capacity, which means for us going into pilot very, very quickly so that we can already encounter what those challenges are going to be. I think we heard on one of the earlier panels that working in a lab environment is very different than working in actually the development side. So you're going to really understand what your challenges are when you start to try and commercialize a product and bring it to the market. And we're trying to basically disrupt ourselves every day by understanding what those challenges are going to be and start solving for them quickly. So those are kind of like 3 big pillars we've been working towards. And then I think more on the commercialization side, we've been really just trying to expand our network in food service. So if anybody has contacts to food, restaurants, chefs, even food service chains, we're really trying to get in touch and already start to get feedback on the product and loop that into our R&D to improve. So that is a little bit. There's more, but I'll just pause there.
Can I ask Isabella? Yeah, definitely. Okay, I have a question for Isabella. What foods are you starting with? Was it chicken and
pork? Yeah.
And
so exactly. And what was your
a whole cut or?
Yes,
Right.
exactly. So we're focusing on whole cuts. So basically products that are not what you've seen in supermarket shelves today or in restaurants really. So there's tons of burgers, sausages, patties, chicken nuggets, etc. On the market. And so there don't need to be more of those products today, I would say. It's quite saturated. So we're focusing on whole cuts, and we're also doing applications in seafood already. But what we're really bringing to market as our flagships are chicken and pork. I think for us, the larger vision is not just like, you know, a very narrow focus on whole cuts, of course. We see our mycelium being applied in meat, fish, dairy, functional ingredients. So we have a roadmap and a pipeline for products for the next several years. But yeah, we're starting with chicken and pork because we think it's actually a very good application for the mycelium that we're growing. And it's also something where you see a dramatic increase in, for example, chicken consumption. And so there's a lot of arguments environmentally in terms of land, water, energy footprint as to why our product also can make a big impact in those areas. Not to ramble on here, but I think our land footprint is 25,000 times less intensive than that of beef, actually. And then for pork, our water consumption is, I think it's 147,000 times less than what it takes to produce the same amount of pork than what we produce with mycelium. So the impact is really very, very clear. But I'll pause there. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. It's so great to hear about all these new developments. And I think just from the IndieBio perspective, it's like, it feels amazing to hear about, all the progress you've made post-program. Just taking a step back, Rini, I'd love to hear from you. Like, we've heard from so many different companies with different technological approaches, different product applications. In your work as an investor, like what, themes, trends, or tailwinds are you most excited about?
Well, I think the most interesting thing that's happening right now in the food system is what we call the digitization of food. All of these companies that are innovating and disrupting, they're very much taking a computation-first approach to this, discovery. And it's allowing them to accelerate the pace of innovation well beyond what we've ever seen in the past. So this is something that I think both Neil and Isabella are doing, and it was something we were, very excited about when we looked at Harmony, and it's something that I hope to learn more about later today from Isabella. But I think that's really the fundamental difference in the food technology companies that are emerging now versus how food was being developed, a decade ago.
Awesome. No, that's super helpful. I'd like to open it up to audience Q&A in case folks have questions, but just in the interest of time, I think we're going to take one, and if you have follow-up, inquiries, definitely feel free to reach out to any of the panelists here.